This is a 19 millimeter deep well 3/8 inch drive socket, and so is this. Now, other than cosmetic differences, they're both about the same, but obviously this one is impact rated where this one isn't. So why do I have both of these sockets? Well, today we're going to talk about that, and if you're just getting started in automotive repair, watch this video because if you're better informed, I think you'll be able to make a better buying decision when you go up on the tool truck. So let's talk about some of the things that I think you should know before you get started. Let's go. Tool companies are going to tell you that you should not use this chrome socket on an impact gun because it's not rated for that. So what about an impact socket? Can you use these on a ratchet? Yeah, you sure can. The biggest difference between these impacts and the chrome sockets, other than the outside coating, is what they're made of on the inside. Most good impact sockets are made out of chrome molybdenum. Let's just go with chrome moly. Now that socket is made to be a little bit softer than the metal inside of a chrome socket, and that's because if you put it on one of these things, it's going to be impacting on it all day long. And those impacts will slightly deform the metal instead of breaking it. So this is a harder tool, which means it's going to hold its shape for a lot longer over the years as you're ratcheting with it. But if you've got some rusty fasteners and you need to use a hammer to hammer a socket onto that fastener, don't do it with a chrome one because you're going to chip that chrome off or you're going to crack your socket. But with an impact rated socket, I've got no problem with doing that because it's rated for impact. So that's from a wrench or from a hammer if you really need one, and a lot of times you do. Impact sockets are reverse compatible. You can use them with all of your tools, including power tools, but you can't say the same thing about chrome. Now, people will tell you that you need chrome sockets because they're a little bit thinner than an impact socket. Now this is made by Gray Pneumatic, and this is a snap-on socket, so it's not quite apples to apples, but I measured them with a micrometer. The outside diameter of this snap-on socket is 0.993 inches. That's just a hair shy of a 1-inch diameter. Now this one is 1.023 inches, so it's 30 thousandths of an inch thicker than the snap-on, which means, yeah, the snap-on can get into someplace that's 30 thousandths of an inch tighter than this one, but that happens very rarely. So eventually you will want some chrome sockets in your arsenal, but when you're first getting started, you'll want as much bang for your buck as possible, and that's definitely by buying impact sockets and holding off on the chrome until you can afford some later. One type of socket where you're going to find a big difference between impact and chrome is going to be your universal sockets or your swivels. Now this one is a snap-on swivel socket. That's what I call it. Some people call it universal, but you can see inside there's a ball that rotates inside that cup, and there's a single pin that goes through that ball to retain it. Now on this design, there's no collar that keeps that pin in place. What they've done is welded that pin and then sanded it smooth, so you don't even see it. This is a chrome universal socket from Mac. Now you can see a big difference in the way that these are designed. This one is definitely not safe to use with an impact. It'll fly apart on you if you try to do that. Something I've also noticed about a universal joint like this one is that it can bind up on you if you're at an extreme angle. That's not a problem with this swivel socket. At any angle that it will allow you to bend it, it'll rotate smoothly and not bind up on you. But you can see with this universal, at some points, you can get almost a 90-degree angle, but as you turn it, it has to open up that angle because of the way it's designed. So this will get you into a smaller, tighter area, but for almost every job, the swivel is going to be just fine and it works a lot better. Let's talk about socket retention now. On a chrome socket, you can see that inside of that square drive, on each one of those sides, is a notch that's been machined out of it. That notch is supposed to lock into your ratchet right there with that detent ball. An impact socket is different. Inside that square drive, there's no notches machined out of it, but on the side here, you can see that it's got a hole drilled through it. Sometimes there's going to be 2 holes drilled through the socket. It just depends on what the manufacturer decides, but that's going to be where that detent ball can retain the socket. That's just with a manual ratchet, but with an impact wrench, you've got 2 different types of anvil, and they've retained the sockets completely differently. The first one is this friction ring retainer that goes over a rubber O-ring that acts kind of like a spring. That spring puts tension on the friction ring, which puts tension on the socket and retains it to the impact wrench. That's by far the most common type of retention that you'll have on an impact wrench. The other is this pin style. When you put an impact socket on an anvil like that, that pin will spring through the hole and it'll lock it in place permanently until you get a pocket screwdriver to push that pin in and release the socket. Now I really like that, especially when I'm using these swivel sockets or wobble sockets, because they can go off balance. If you're using a swivel socket like this and your fastener breaks or you slip off of it, that socket's going to be turning really fast, but it's also going to be off balance, which can throw a socket off of a regular impact anvil, but not off of a pinned one. If you watch NASCAR, you know what that looks like. You've got that tire changer going around the wheel with the thunder gun, and as he's moving from one nut to the next one, that nut is still spinning in midair because it's going so fast. Now this could happen to you in the shop also, and that's why I use that pinned anvil on that snap-on gun, because whenever I'm using a swivel socket, I like to keep that thing locked in and protect my teeth. It's also another place where a chrome socket is not backwards compatible with impacts, because a pinned anvil has nowhere to go in there, so it will not retain a chrome socket. Well, if you're just getting started in the industry, maybe you'll consider not buying chrome sockets just yet, and you can spend some of that money on one of these things. This is going to make you a lot faster and more efficient. It's also going to save your body. This is not an easy industry to work in, and if you can save some of your joints and your muscles, you can keep on wrenching for a lot of years. Thanks for watching.